Thoughts of UFOs. What are your thoughts? I personally think they're either man-made, and when they're not man-made, they're demons. They're not from other universes or any of that stuff. It's so dumb how they want us to think about these things supposedly coming from a billion years away, and then our fighters come and they're like, pew 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 pew, and then they shoot down this thing that can travel light years and crashes. Like, I don't buy into any of it.
It's a tall task in less than 10 minutes or so here to describe it. But ufology was one of my first one of the first things I really fell in love with. And I've been to all kinds of UFO conferences. And I mean, I was friends with Jim Mars. You know, before he passed away, he wrote Alien Agenda, one of the better books written on UFOs. And my interpretation, I think, is certainly objective and middle of the road. UFOs obviously are unidentified flying objects, right? And these things have been seen in the skies since before flight and before we had a conception of flight. What they are can be described in a variety of different ways, because we can describe them as natural phenomenon. We could talk about ball lightning. We could talk about plasmas. We could also look at, in the 70s, the U.S. Department of Agriculture did a study on UFOs in Utah and found that they were actually insect swarms, which Chris Carter used that, I think, for an episode of The X-Files, where these swarms of insects fly through an electromagnetic field. The swarm is so big, you hear that buzzing like electricity. Wow. They tend to be in rural areas, so they hover over cars. They're attracted to light. So there's that angle to it, which is a small percentage. You change the name today to UAP, to drones. It confuses people. I think they're trying to rewrite the narrative. But ultimately, I think a lot of the UFO subject, if you think about it, it parallels, like Jacques Vallée points out, it parallels the fairy mythology from Europe. It also parallels, going back further, shamanic cults. The shaman gets taken into another world. The shaman is experimented on. The shaman comes back with knowledge of the universe and shares it with his people. The fairies would kidnap you. The fairies were usually little green people. The elves and the fairies in the lore usually were very technologically advanced. They came from space. Some books describe them as coming from space. And they were super technologically advanced. They were described as little green people. They would kidnap you. They would take you to other realms. Underneath of mountains, like military bases, we would say today. They would take you into the sky, like in ships, we say today. They would implant things in you. They would experiment on you. And then usually UFO abductees will come back with very similar messages. Take care of the planet and make sure that we don't blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons. Well, those are two things that humans have always been concerned about. So that's kind of coming from the human unconscious. We're consciously, subconsciously, and unconsciously concerned with nuclear weapons. We're also similarly concerned with, let's not destroy our planet. Let's not pollute our planet. So in other words, when you look at the gray alien, and even if you look at Aleister Crowley's summoning of the character Lamb, L-A-M, it looks like a little gray alien, they're very fetal. They're fetal-like. They're very infantile or fetal-like. And I think that's an unconscious projection of us in a lot of ways. And so we project ourselves outward. We project ourselves into the physical world. We project our fears. A lot of UFOs appear during times of war. And of course, during times of war, you have new technologies. Like during the 1930s, you had jet engines in Germany when everybody else was using more older technology, right? They were little propeller planes compared to the jet engines the Germans had. Way more advanced. You see that? That is an alien spaceship to later generations. We don't know what it was in the 30s, but we look back and we think, wow, those things they saw back then, those must have been aliens or something. It's like, no, it was war. Plus, war is hell. You're on the battlefield, super stressed. There's tons of UFOs over there in Ukraine where the fighting is, because you have intense psychic stressors, as Carl Jung called them, and that will lead to people seeing things that, one, aren't there, misidentifying things that are there, or hearing things and then projecting some image of what it might be, not to mention the advanced technology on top of that. And when you mix all that together, especially during times of war or during the Cold War, where we're afraid of nuclear weapons, we're afraid of Russia, and we're going to mutually destroy each other, and the aliens are here to tell us to not kill each other. And I think, again, that's a fetal projection of the unconscious mind, telling us to not kill each other, telling us to live in peace. And that's probably part of the reason that UFOs are typically seen around military installations. But a large percentage of them, Carl Jung even acknowledged that if it's just a psychic projection, that doesn't explain how some of these things appear on radar. There's clearly a physical component to it. There's something for the signals to bounce back off of. Whatever that is, we don't know. But we do know about things like placebo effect. We do know that humans, depending on their mindset, can influence the world around them. Maybe not manifesting a Porsche or manifesting a stack of money or gold bars, but we can manifest and create our reality. Our perception matters. And so we look at UFOs from a particular point of view, we tend to see what we want to see. The UFO community is filled with people that make up stories, people that are delusional, but it's also filled with really good researchers. Then you have the military, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, who infiltrated the UFO community to pump them full of nonsensical stories, which led to a lot of the modern-day UFO myths. So whatever it is, whether it connects with the fairy lore or it connects with the shamanic lore, it certainly does. Whether it's a psychic projection or whether you call it demons or it's something from somewhere else, there is something that I would call it a spiritual phenomenon, more so than even a physical thing, because when people interact with them, they have really usually positive experiences. But like with anything else, if you go into it with a bad perception, you'll have a bad experience, as Dr. Rick Strassman points out in the DMT Spirit Molecule book that he wrote after the studies he conducted. People that went into taking the DMT with a really bad point of view had a really bad interaction with those things that they saw.
Interesting. That's so interesting. If you have a bad attitude, you're going to have a bad trip, right?
Yeah. I've never done it, but that's what I've read.
Well, I tried to do it, but my dog wouldn't stop barking, so I couldn't trip balls like I wanted to. She wouldn't let me, But
I'm sorry I rambled on, but there's so much to kind of unload.
You were crushing it. Yeah. There is no rambling on. I could listen to you all day, and I'm sad that's coming to an end because you have great knowledge. This is my favorite kind of episode, dude. I love talking about the occult and hidden history and what's really going on. And it's like, I'm going to be honest with you, it gets harder and harder and harder for me to do stand-up comedy because my data points are so different than what anybody else is used to. And it's just again, it's this weird thing where it's like everyone's like dumbing down. It is dumbing down, but it's also like we have more data than we've ever had in our life. People have never had this much data ever. The amount of data we get in maybe a week is more than some people got in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And
what, you think that's clogging our
100%.
Oh, interesting.
But it's also made it so like it's so hard to go and hear somebody talk about politics because everything in your feed is death and destruction that you just really want to go somewhere like a comedy show and just numb out and just hear poop jokes and
drugs.
Tits and ass jokes and my wife is crazy and, girls do this, guys do that. So it's like people always like, well, it's very interesting because people always go, well, if George Carlin was around today, it would be interesting to see his take because there are so many old school liberals from back in the day that are just crazy progressives now. Like, even though towards the end he was calling out both sides, but how many guys have we seen that were like that back in the day are now like, Trump, not like Biden, It's like, it's interesting to me. Where would he be today? And would he be able to do what he wants to do? Because most people are consuming so much data now, they kind of just want to break.
Yeah, and how much that data influences us when you have things like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, etc., where you have algorithms at one point or another that are directed to pushing a certain narrative as opposed to a country like China where they push other things on TikTok that are more about culture or more about math and science and history. And what do we get here in the United States? We get degeneracy and filth and garbage. And that is part of the intelligence thing, again, we talked about, because that can direct people's perceptions and change their viewpoints where maybe somebody's a rational human being right now, but then in 5 years of using those platforms, or even in a year of using those platforms, they're totally radicalized. But it's a new age. That information is yes, at our fingertips. I think it's almost too much for us to handle because we as individuals didn't really do anything to develop, nor do we understand this technology. It's just handed to us from birth. A generation or two handed this stuff, and it's super dangerous.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's just, if you don't think you're in an algorithm, log off of your social media and just go back to the front page and see what that's pushing.
What up? Isn't there a setting where you can reset your whole algorithm.
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm sure that's what they'll do. Oh, okay, you hit a button. I guess we can't push this fucking voodoo magic on you. Damn it, bud! Why?
Actually, it wouldn't surprise me at all because it would that they kind of build those things in. They just hide them, so that they're
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, well, that too, but yeah, also just they have no moral. What would you say, liability in that situation if you could get out of it and you choose not to.
All right. Well,
Yes,
we know
yes.
you have a limited time, and we're down to 2 minutes till you got to go. One more time, please tell us where we can find you.
Yeah,
Ryan.
of course. My website is tstradio.info. It's a very basic website. And on the website, you can find the free archive. My show is Monday through Friday. There are ads in it, so I encourage people to sign up to the ad-free show. You get access to my show, my montages I make, all the digital copies of my books, the video archive and the document archive. I also have the books for sale, physical copies on the website. They're much cheaper than they are on other platforms. tstradio.info. The emails, the social media are there, Facebook and X. My email, I'll give it out, is rdgable@yahoo.com, rdgable@yahoo.com. I want to thank you guys for having me on. This was a very fun conversation, and I'll leave you with one other interesting point based on what you were just saying. I wonder if you guys knew this, but one of the co-founders of Netflix is actually a very close relative of Edward Bernays,
Yep.
the father of propaganda and modern public relations.
And Netflix is just dark arts, dude. Just dark
Yes, sir.
arts.
How do you know what to trust? You got to be objective and question everything, like you said.